Hi, I'm attorney Gregory Dell with the law firm of attorneys Dell and Schaefer, joined today by attorney Stephen Jessup. How are you today?
Good, Greg. How are you?
Good. And today we want to speak to you about some of the most common reasons that disability insurance carriers challenge disability claims as a result of back conditions. Now, Steve, we've handled, I would say, probably 25% of the claims that we get for disability have to do with back disorders. And we often see that the disability insurance companies like to challenge these a lot because they try to claim there's no objective evidence, or we saw you on video doing something, so that means that you could go ahead and work in an office. So I want to just talk about that for a few minutes, and more specifically talk about what is it that a disability carrier is really looking for in order to support a claim for as a result of a back disorder. So let's first start with what's some of the most common reasons that you see in your claims when you have someone with a back condition and the disability carrier denies the claim. Why are they denying the claim?
Number one, I think it's always going to be that there are no documented restrictions and limitations. Most of the time you'll see their review of the medical records and the denial letter. It says, well, the doctor said you had a normal gait, that you were, physical exam was normal in certain portions, so they'll focus in on that, and they'll say, even though you may have this condition, there might be some, narrowing of the canal or a herniated disc or a bulge. You're saying there's no correlation to clinical observations as to restrictions and limitations for physical duty.
What I'm seeing a lot lately that's really annoying me is that these claims people are claimed with like a return to work duration period of time. So say someone has a herniated disc or a lumbar strain, maybe they had an accident, maybe they picked something up at work, whatever it is that caused their back to start bothering them. And these claims people are claimed to say, okay, you had a herniated disc, maybe you had an injection, maybe you didn't, you should be better in 6 weeks. And basically they just stop it at that point. And I'm seeing a lot of denials come back because of that, which is really unfair. So what do you recommend to a claimant who has this back condition? Maybe they've only been out of work for 4 weeks or 6 weeks. What should they do to be able to try to improve their claim to stay on claim?
I think it really is going to come down to the medical records. Everything is going to be how it's being documented in the records. You would like to think that everything you're saying to your doctor is being transcribed into the record. A lot of times, once a person, how many times have you heard where they'll say, I told my doctor this, but I never checked my records to make sure he was writing it down. I think it's important then, since you're right, there is this glaring idea of how long it should take someone to get back to work, for the doctor in the medical notes to be able to at least clarify what he thinks is going to be out of work. So you have a date maybe out for the next 6 weeks. So you're at least counteracting their time frame. But when the insurance company does have an agenda, it's kind of hard to narrow it down with this idea of what a normal person would do. I mean, if like we've always said, you can't measure pain. You don't know how someone's going to react to pain. Peyton Manning played football with herniations in his neck. Someone may have a slight bulge and be writhing in pain in bed. So it depends on the person, and that individual nature of it is hard when an insurance company is trying to lump everyone as a whole.
Right. That's what's so crazy is there's no pain machine. There's no medical device in the world that can verify whether or not somebody is really in pain and limited as a result of that pain. So that takes me to my next question, which is, what's the objective testing that's most relied upon by these disability carriers in order to verify somebody actually has a back condition?
Usually you'll see MRIs. MRIs, sometimes people get some type of scan, but the MRI will at least show that there's something there. Then the nuance becomes is diagnosis doesn't equal disability. So even though you might have objective findings in film, the insurance company may make the argument that there's still nothing that's drawing a correlation that's preventing you from doing your job.
Okay, the other thing we've been seeing is if someone has, let's say, a lumbar lower back problem and they're having some radiation or pain down their right leg or their left leg, that they'll go for EMG testing, which is a nerve conduction study test to show whether or not there's some kind of nerve root impingement which is causing their problem. A lot of times claimants don't have that type of testing done because the doctors, it's more of like a medical legal diagnosis, and the person says, yeah, I know I'm having that pain down my leg. The MRI shows that it would be reasonable to be having that within the pain distribution from a lower back problem, and they just don't do it. But yet the disability companies expect someone to have some kind of nerve conduction study test done or an EMG like we discussed.
I don't think many doctors, like you said, when the MRI says it'd be reasonable to experience that, doctors aren't in the, of the mindset to, basically probe and shock people to find out if it is true. But the insurance companies want, and a lot of times too, they're inconclusive.
Right.
And the person can still very much have that problem going.
Something else I see that happens a lot in the disability claims is a person has a very bad back condition, no doubt about it. They're out for a couple months, they have back surgery. 6 weeks later, again, they say standard recovery time for a back surgery is 6 weeks. The person still says, look, I know I had my back surgery, it might have minimized some of my pain, it may have stopped the bleeding per se, but I still am uncomfortable, I'm still limited in what I can do. But the disability carrier, like 8 out of 10 times says, no, you're ready to go back to work.
And the issue is too, is you'll see an orthopedic surgeon, his notes will say, when they do the follow-up, everything's healing well, surgery was a success. Well, from a structural standpoint of was the surgery as to be performed done successfully? Yes, but it doesn't always alleviate the pain. And the insurance companies, like you said, though, they think, well, you've been out long enough, this is the standard recovery time.
What I know that most of the disability claims adjusters don't understand is that people have back surgery not only because they're in pain, but primarily because there's a paralysis issue there. There's something dangerous going on that could result in them being paralyzed if they were to accidentally fall, get hit, have another accident, or anything that could happen to them which would cause their spinal cord to be impinged either by disc material or a vertebrae. And when you have surgery, the doctors go in and they stabilize that situation. So it doesn't necessarily mean just because you had surgery you're cured. If it was the case, that would be phenomenal, because we know every single person we represent would trade their disability benefits for a pain-free life in a minute. But disability insurance claims examiners don't understand that. They just say, you had your surgery, 8-week recovery time, back to work.
Yeah, and not to mention another thing they don't understand is that surgery where it took place can cause structural weakness in levels above or below.
Right.
That can call for more surgery down the road even.
Right, and we see a lot of the claimants who do try to go back to work, they make it for 2 weeks and then they're back out of work, and sometimes they go back and get fired, and then totally screws up their policy because they lose their coverage.
Yep.
So it's very risky for a disability claimant, and they have to evaluate all of their options even when they're considering having the surgery, and not necessarily assume that the disability carrier is going to continue to pay them. However, obviously what we do is work with the claimant, work with their doctor, and educate and build a good record for the disability insurance carrier so that they understand this person can't work. Which brings me to one last point, which we've talked about before, is how else can we show physically that a person with a back problem is limited in their ability to do their job? What type of testing can we recommend or is often done?
Probably the most standard would be a functional capacity evaluation, which will test what the ability is physically set against the Department of Labor's physical standards. It's by no means an exact science and replicating what your job duties were in and out, but it's the closest thing to be able to at least draw a nexus between the complaints and how it's going to affect your ability to do the job.
Right, and sometimes, we'll discuss all the time, should we have someone go for a functional capacity exam, because often it's a medical legal type evaluation, and really, how do you compare a 3-hour or 4-hour, even if it's a 6-hour functional capacity exam, to working 5 days a week, 40 hours a week? You can't, but the disability carriers often send people for these exams, so sometimes you have to be proactive and aggressive in your disability claim and go for this functional capacity exam and have a good examiner who can somewhat relate those limitations to how it would be on a 40-hour work week when they're only seeing you for 3 hours. So I'm not saying we're big fans of functional capacity exams, but they are helpful sometimes, especially when you only have one opportunity to submit an appeal or evidence for a trial. So if you have any type of back disorder claim or are experiencing a disability as a result of a back condition, whether it's caused by work, an auto accident, or just something that has come about because of a sickness of the aging process, which is totally normal, you may be eligible for disability benefits. You may have already filed a claim and you're being challenged in your disability claim. We welcome the opportunity to help you with your claim and let you know how we can help you to continue to get benefits paid. We always offer a free consultation, and we welcome the opportunity to speak with you.